Hi, good evening. This is Kanti, and today I'm here to discuss something about the animal tissues. Before knowing what the animal tissues and what their functions are, let us first talk about the tissues. What are tissues? As you all have studied earlier, a multicellular organism is formed from a single cell. This single cell divide to form several different cells, and among those cells a group of cells which are collectively performing similar function are called the tissues, and these tissues are present both in the animals as well as in the plants. Today we are going to talk about the animal tissues, which is such a complex mechanism. So coming to the animal tissues, these animal tissues are four kinds. They are the epithelial tissues, muscular tissues, nervous tissue, and the connective tissue. So let us now talk something about epithelial tissue in detail. Epithelial tissues are those which are formed in the lining of the body surfaces. Most of the epithelial tissues are present in the lining of the body surface, right? And they also account for glands. The glands are also seen in the epithelial tissue. So the cells of the epithelial tissues are arranged in multiple layers and are very closely packed. And the epithelial tissues, they do not have blood vessels present in it. So they depend upon the other connective tissues for their nutrition and also for the other functions. And these epithelial tissues mostly lie upon the edges of the organs with two prominent surfaces, like the apical surface and the basal surface. Apical surface is that which is on the top, and the basal surface is that which opens into the body cavity. And the most important functions of the epithelial tissue are protection, absorption, and secretion. Based on this, the epithelial tissues are of four kinds, like the squamous epithelium, cuboidal epithelium, columnar epithelium, and ciliated epithelium. Let us now first move into the squamous epithelium. As you know, the squamous epithelium is having cells which are very closely packed, and that too multiple in multiple layers. And the squamous epithelium is having the cells which are thin and flat. So where do we find the squamous epithelium? Squamous epithelium is most prominently found in the esophagus, the blood vessels, alveoli, and the inner cavities of the mouth. And what is the function of the squamous epithelium? Squamous epithelium tissue lends protection against mechanical injuries and also blocking any sort of germs from entering into the body cavity. Then coming to the cuboidal epithelium tissue. Cuboidal epithelium tissues are cuboidal in shape in respect to their name, and these cuboidal tissues are present in the kidney tubules, salivary glands, and the sweat glands. And the functions of the cuboidal epithelium tissues are secretion, protection, and absorption. And this cuboidal tissue is also lined or layered in multiple layers in case of the stratified cuboidal epithelium, which is also found in the salivary ducts as well as the pancreatic ducts. Then the third kind of epithelium tissue are the ciliated epithelium tissue. Before knowing ciliated epithelium tissue, let us something discuss about columnar epithelium tissue. Columnar epithelium tissues are meant because of their shape, like they are in pillar shaped. Hence they got the name columnar epithelium tissue. And where do we find this columnar epithelium tissue? They are found in the intestine and also in the lining of the stomach. The important function of the columnar epithelium tissue includes secretion and absorption. And now let's move to ciliated epithelium tissue. Ciliated epithelium tissue is nothing but the columnar epithelium tissue which is having cilia over its surface. And so it is named the ciliated epithelium tissue. This ciliated epithelium tissue is found majorly in the kidney tubules, the respiratory tract and also the lining of trachea, which helps in the movement of the materials in a given direction. Apart from these four, there is an other kind of epithelium present, that is glandular epithelial tissue. Glandular epithelial tissues are nothing but the modified epithelial tissue. Modified in the sense which are turned, a little changes which occur in the epithelium tissue is known as the glandular epithelium tissue. So, this glandular epithelium tissue is mostly seen in sweat glands and tear glands. And what is the function? Obviously, as we know, the function of the glandular epithelium tissue is to secrete. On a whole, the functions of the epithelium tissues are three. What they are? Protection, absorption and secretion. And yes, this is all about the epithelial tissues. Now let's move to the muscular tissue. So muscular tissue is a specialized tissue found in animals. This is not seen in plants. It is seen particularly in the animals. And what they do? They are responsible for applying force on various parts of the body by the method of contraction. The thin and elongated muscular fibers which are present in the muscular tissues are responsible for the contraction of the muscle. And you know, the muscle fibers are having two kinds of proteins present in it, which are called actin and myosin. And these two are the main heroes of the muscular tissue, where they help in the movement of the muscle. And let's know the functions of the muscle. Functions of the muscles are extensibility, like we can stretch our hand because of the stretching ability of the muscles, and that is called extensibility. Then contractibility, that is once you stretch the hand and you can again put it forward, put it back. This is because of the contractibility of the muscular cells. They extend and they shorten themselves, that are called excitability and contractibility. And the other characteristic feature of the muscular tissue is excitability, that is a muscular tissue can respond to the stimulus because of the presence of a motor neuron or by the secretion of any hormone. The muscle can respond to the stimulus, and that property is called excitability. And the other property is elasticity, that is the muscle is having the ability to recall to its usual length after being stretched. See, as if you stretch a rubber band and you leave, it again come back to its position, right? That same property is seen in the muscle, and that is called the elasticity. Once the muscle is stretched, it can again recoil into its original position, and that's what called elasticity. So the four properties of the muscles are extensibility, contractibility, excitability and elasticity. These are the four properties which are seen in the specialized tissues called muscular tissues. Now let's learn the types of muscular tissues and its function. So muscular tissues are three, like the skeletal muscular tissue, smooth muscular tissue and cardiac muscular tissue. What are skeletal muscular tissues? Skeletal muscular tissues are a kind of voluntary muscles, or they are also called striated muscles, because as we discussed earlier, these kind of muscular tissues have two bands present on it, the dark and light bands present, which are of the proteins called actin and myosin. So when these two bands or the patches appear upon the muscle, then we consider it as the striated muscular tissue or the skeletal muscular tissue. This skeletal muscular tissues are arranged in bundles and are arranged very tight among themselves. Whereas these bundles of the skeletal muscular tissue are combined with the tendons. That is, the tendons give support to the bundles of the skeletal muscular tissue. These skeletal muscular tissues are helpful in the movement, that is, they help in the skeletal movements. We are able to move our hand, we are able to move our neck. This is because of the movement of the skeletal muscular tissue in association with the skeletal system. That means the skeletal muscular tissue helps in the movement of the body. Then coming to the smooth muscular tissue, these smooth muscular tissues are involuntary and are non-striated muscles. What is involuntary? Like you see, if something comes and fell in the eye, what do we do? Yes, we blink our eyes immediately, right? So this blinking of eyes is not that what our brain told. It is involuntary inaction. That is, as soon as we face something, we immediately react. And that is not suggested by the brain. That is not the information given by the brain. It is involuntary inaction. As well, we breathe. Now, as I am talking, I am also breathing a while, right? I did not stop breathing. Why? Because the breathing is a continuous process. There are no one to insist that you have to breathe. The heartbeat. My heart goes on beating as I am talking or as I am sleeping, because it's the function. It has to pump continuously and it is involuntary. There are no one to guide the heart to beat. There are no one to insist the heart to beat. It's an involuntary action. So such involuntary actions are performed by the smooth muscular tissues. Right. So these smooth muscular are involuntary in nature and are non-striated muscles. Non-striated in the sense we do not see any patches or bands upon the muscle. That is, the actin and myosin are not present in the smooth muscular tissues. So where do we find these smooth muscular tissues? In the sense, we find them in the blood vessels, like the walls of the arteries and veins. Also we find them in the urinary tract, the trachea, digestive system and all. And they help in the peristalsis movement of the food from the up to the down of the alimentary canal. So you know what is peristaltic movement? That is the continuous contraction and relaxation of the muscular tissue in order to push the material inside is called as the peristaltic movement. So peristaltic movements are performed by the smooth muscular tissues wherever necessary. Then the third kind of muscular tissue are the cardiac muscular tissues. The name itself tells that These tissues are pertained only to the walls of the heart. So the walls of the heart are majorly comprising cardiac muscular tissue, which are also involuntary in nature but striated. See here, the smooth muscular tissues are involuntary and are non-striated, whereas skeletal muscles are voluntary and striated. Here, the cardiac muscle tissues are involuntary in action, but the striations are seen, that is, the actin and myosin proteins are present in the cardiac muscle tissue. And these cardiac muscle tissues are widely branched and are at irregular angles. Why? In order to coordinate the contractions occurring inside the heart, so as to supply each and every end of the heart and to support the contraction, to coordinate the contraction and relaxation of the heart. These cardiac muscle tissues are finely branched. And yes, this is all about the muscular tissues. Ultimately, we learn muscular tissues helps in the movement of the things. Right. And then the third kind of animal tissues are the nervous tissues. You know what the nervous tissues are? They are made up of a group of similar cells called neurons or nerve cells. So, these nervous tissue form the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. While in the central nervous system, the nervous tissues form the spinal cord and the brain. In the peripheral nervous system, the name itself says peripheral, that is, they surround. In the peripheral nervous system, the nervous tissues makes up the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves and are including both the motor and sensory neurons. Now, what is the important function of the nervous tissue? It is to transmit as well as to carry the nerve impulses in various parts of the body to the brain, from the brain to various parts of the body. And this is often sent by the axons. Axons send the information, dendrites receive the information and pulls or pushes it up further. These nerve cells are again three kinds called the sensory neurons, motor neurons and the mixed neurons, or also called the interneurons. Sensory neurons are those which carry impulses from the bodily organs to the brain. For example, if you touch a hot plate, you will immediately withdraw the hand. Why? Because these sensory nerves present in the tips of your fingers are saying you that you touch something hot, and so you immediately withdraw the hand. So these impulses are carried to the brain. So sensory neurons carry information from the sensory organs to the brain, whereas the motor neurons carry the information from the brain to the spinal cord, and that is the brain to the sense organs. That is the reason why we immediately withdraw the hand as soon as we touch a hot plate, right? So once you touch, you feel it hot because it is the message derived from the brain to your sensory organs that it is hot, and you please withdraw the hand. Then mixed neurons or interneurons are having the function of both sensory and motor neurons. And now coming to the last kind of tissues, that are connective tissues. You know, connective tissues, they are there to give the support as well as to connect various other kinds of tissues and organs inside the body. You know, the whole system inside is a network. That is, one is coordinated with the other. One is twined up with the other. That is, each and every organ has to coordinate with one another. There is a large network which is connecting one to the other, and that network is nothing but the connective tissues. So these connective tissues are made up of the cells and fibers of collagen as well as the extracellular matrix. Connective tissues are found abundantly inside the body, and they are freely arranged so as to move and so as to transport. They are freely arranged. And the most important functions of the connective tissues are to transport. Now, what are the various connective tissues present? They are the areolar tissue, adipose tissue, bone, cartilage, and the blood. Now let's talk something about the areolar connective tissues. These areolar connective tissues are those which lie under the skin, and they are composed of globules, fat globules, that is tiny particles of fat are present in the areolar tissues, and they are having the nerves and blood vessels surrounded. What is the function of the areolar tissue? In the sense, they help in the repairing of the tissues, and they provide support to the body. Then coming to adipose tissue. Adipose tissues are present next to the areolar tissues. They are also found under the skin, and they are composed of fat globules. And the function of the adipose tissue is to insulate the body. You know what is an insulator, right? It does not allow the temperature to go out or to come in, right? So that it acts as an insulator. The fat or the adipose tissues act as the insulators to our body. That means they do not allow our body temperature to escape out, and they do not allow the external temperature to enter in. Thereby they maintains a balance in the temperature, body temperature. So this is the one main role of adipose tissue. And not only that, they also act as the support to the system. Then the other kind of connective tissues are bones. You know, the skeletal system which is present in our body is made up of bones. And you know well that there are 206 bones present. Right. So these bones all together are called as the skeletal system. And these bones are helpful in the movement of the body. They give a particular structure and a support to the body, and they also gives a particular shape to the body. Apart from that, they help in the movement of the body. That are the functions of the bones or the skeletal muscles, skeletal connective tissue present in our body. And the bones are also the place, bone marrow, which is inside cavity of the bone, is a place where all the blood cells are produced. So then the next kind of connective tissue are cartilage. Cartilage are what? Here we need to notice a difference between a bone and a cartilage. Bone is the hardest substance which is formed, and cartilage is the soft substance. And this we can find here in the tip of the nose, tip of the ears, also in between the vertebral columns. One vertebrae is connected to the other vertebrae with the cartilage which is present, right? So the soft bone is called as the cartilage. And where do we find this cartilage? As we already discussed, they are present in the ear tips, tip of the nose, in the vertebral column, that is in between two vertebrae, and also in the bronchi. These are the places where we find cartilage. Then coming to the another connective tissue, that is blood. We know blood is a connective tissue, and blood is the only fluid connective tissue. That is, it is the only connective tissue which is in liquid form. Hence, it is called the fluid connective tissue. And what is the role of fluid connective tissue or blood? That is, it helps in providing defense mechanism. That is, it helps fighting against the diseases and kills the microorganisms that try to enter our body. That is called defense mechanism. So blood helps in providing defense mechanism. It helps in the transportation of the materials from one part to the other. It maintains homeostasis. Homeostasis is maintaining all the bodily fluids in an equilibrium. That is called homeostasis. It is also the primary function of the blood. And blood also have a kind of cells called platelets which helps in the clotting of the blood during an injury. Suppose you have a cut and you feel like the blood goes on continuously, but after some time you notice that it was clotted, right? How is it clotted and why? In the sense, it is because of the platelets which are present. Soon as we get the injury, all the platelets will come and collect at the site of injury, and they goes on spinning the thread like a web. They makes a web and pulls it to the center, thereby it helps in healing of the wound. So what happens? Obviously, when the wound heals, when it was pulled inside, then the blood bleeding will be stopped. So the clotting of the blood is the prime role of blood platelets. Apart from this, what they do, they also produce some kind of vasoconstrictors which helps in avoiding the vascular spasms. Okay, so this is how the blood is formed and act as a connective tissue in the body. And yes children, hope you understood. This is all what I want to discuss in brief about the animal tissues. Hope you understood. Thank you.